Hey everyone, Dr. Axe here. There was just a Senate hearing, and some of my friends and colleagues were part of it, and it was called Food as Medicine, Current Efforts and Potential Opportunities. I want to watch some of these videos with you and react.
Children today are about 20% more likely to develop type 1 diabetes than they were 20 years ago. Childhood cancer rates are rising a percentage point every year. Asthma is up, so is ADHD, allergies, virtually every type of psychological disorder. In 1980, autism was diagnosed at a rate of just 3 or 4 per 100,000 kids. Today, a newborn child has a 1 in 36 chance that he or she will be autistic. And that rate is also rising every year. Who cares about politics if the next generation is dead or close to it before they can even vote? Just to reiterate the war on moms in this country, today, virtually everything a child eats or drinks will be served on a plastic plate, in a plastic bottle, or be eaten from a plastic container with plastic utensils. Human breast milk now contains thousands of microplastics. If you need formula, you can't find it without inflammatory seed oils or soy. Parents have to order it and buy it from Europe. Does this all seem overwhelming to you? Good. This is what the American mom deals with every day.
So that was Alex Clark, and she's talking about the war on moms. And, one thing that people point out sometimes is that childhood disease rates are only rising because there are more diagnoses. And I can tell you from being a practicing physician and running a functional medicine clinic, that's not true. I mean, kids are sicker today than they ever were in the past. I mean, if you ask your parents or grandparents if the kids that they were spending time with were growing up had numerous allergies and food sensitivities, and you couldn't bring in peanuts or cashews or any of those things into school, that just wasn't a reality. And moms have to work so hard to keep their kids healthy today. Environmental toxins are nearly inevitable for every parent out there. And I can tell you that that's not the only thing we worry about. Now, we worry about glyphosate and all the other chemicals. I mean, I will tell you, Chelsea and I have to study every single food label that comes into our home. The amount of time that I spend trying to find good, clean, healthy food, it's hours every single week. And I'm also thinking about now, there are single moms out there who are raising multiple kids, and basically here's the reality. If they don't spend hours a week studying and combing through and reading food labels, they're giving their kids something toxic. And moms are actually, she's right, moms are actually shipping in products from Europe, paying the additional cost, probably double the cost, just so they don't have to poison their kids. It's crazy that the standards are so low in America, and we've allowed it to happen all in the name of money and convenience. And so I feel so much for Alex Clark. I feel much for all the moms out there and the dads and all the parents who are trying to keep their kids healthy. But the reality is, if you go into any conventional grocery store today, most of those products, almost every single product, is loaded with toxic chemicals. Food dyes, seed oils, artificial sweeteners, added sugar, other chemicals, things that aren't actually food, and they're harming our kids today. And so I'm absolutely on board with her and what she's sharing there in terms of the reality is there is a war on moms. Moms have to fight so hard today to keep their kids healthy. And it shouldn't be that way. The government and these food agencies are supposed to be our protectors, not trying to benefit monetarily off of the health of our kids. Now, I do want to mention, she quotes the studies around the increase in autism rates. And as she talked about, in the early 1900s, it was pretty much non-existent. Now, by the 1980s, it reached nearly 1 in 2,000 kids by the mid-80s. Part of that, they believe, was due to expanding autism diagnosis to include Asperger's in that as well. However, listen, again, we know that it's not just a diagnosis. Again, if I go and ask my dad or my mom or my grandmother who's still alive at 96 years old, if I say, hey, did you have a lot of kids who had this issue? She'll say, no way. Today, according to the CDC's 2023 data, the rate of autism in children has increased to 1 in 32 or 1 in 36. That's about 3% when we're looking at 8-year-olds, how many of them lie somewhere with an autism spectrum disorder? It's incredibly high, and it's increasing more and more. So I applaud Alex and what she's sharing here and fighting for the moms out there. It's really unfair that a mom would have to spend thousands of hours, thousands of dollars a year in order just to protect their kids from our food industry. So let's watch this next video now with a close friend of mine, Vani Hari, known as the Food Babe. She has been on the front lines for years, helping keep our families healthy.
This box of Fruit Loops is from Canada. It's colored naturally with watermelon, blueberry, and carrot juice. This is the U.S. version. It contains 4 different artificial food dyes with the preservative BHT, which is an endocrine disrupting chemical linked in cancer. In 2015, Kellogg's announced plans to remove dyes from their cereals by the end of 2018, but they never did. Instead, they kept producing new cereals for children with these dyes and preservatives, using the most popular toddler songs and movies to hook modern children of today, like Baby Shark cereal and Disney's Little Mermaid, targeting the most vulnerable children. We now have over 111,000 signatures on our petition to ask Kellogg's to finally serve Americans the same cereals they are serving other countries. I'm going to be delivering these petitions to Kellogg's headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan next month on October 15th. Mark your calendar, with many of the health leaders in this room. And I'm inviting all concerned citizens to join me, including all the politicians here today and in Washington and both presidential candidates. This issue is nonpartisan and affects all of us. It's time for us to join together and end this corruption once and for all. Thank you very much.
One of the things that most struck me and convicted me about what Vani just shared there is that these food companies are taking advantage of the most vulnerable in our society, our kids, where hundreds of thousands of concerned citizens have to barge into Kellogg's headquarters, and we have to get 1 million people to sign petitions in order for these corporations to change. And as we can see, these products are very much possible to make without these food dyes. When we're comparing the Canadian version to the United States version, they're radically different. Why can't we use turmeric and watermelon in beetroot juice instead of these food dyes that have been linked to ADHD, gut microbiome issues, immune system issues, disease in our kids? There are studies on food dyes. In fact, one recent meta-analysis found that 16 out of 25 studies on food dyes identified evidence of a positive association with food dye consumption and ADHD. Today, ADHD has also climbed to over 10% of kids. And then let's talk about another one, and that is childhood obesity. Back in the 1970s, 5% of children were obese. Now it's well over 20%. It's quadrupled to 5x in the number of kids that are clinically obese. And by the way, obesity is not just overweight. It's at the point to where it's threatening their health and their life, can take years off their life, predisposing them to other conditions that have risen as well, like childhood diabetes. When we're comparing those Fruit Loops in America to Canada, by the way, Canada is, of course, a little better, but there are other countries that do even better than Canada, like Europe, especially France and Italy. Now, I wanted to compare, Chelsea and I recently went on a trip to Europe. And when we were over there, my brother-in-law said, hey, I want to go and look at the ingredients and see what a McDonald's is like in Italy. And while we were over there, we walked in, we checked out. I didn't eat anything, but we left. But I just want to show you also the difference between McDonald's French fries in the United States versus the United Kingdom. United States has vegetable oils, soybean oil, flavors, wheat and milk derivatives, citric acid, dextrose, sodium acid, pyrophosphate to maintain its color, iodized salt, more vegetable oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated soybean oil, TBHQ, which is a chemical that is very dangerous if you eat a lot of it. And people do eat a lot of it, and all kinds of chemicals here. When we're looking at the United Kingdom, it's vegetable oil from sunflower and canola, potatoes, of course, dextrose, and then salt after. Basically, it's this. It's potatoes, it's sunflower oil, it's dextrose and it's salt. So 4 ingredients versus probably 20 ingredients over here, the United States. Now, are there problems with the United Kingdom? Do I have problems with sunflower and canola oil? Yeah, I do. But is the United States version of French fries 10 times worse for our health? Yes, it is, because of all the other chemicals in there. So the reality is, if you go to Europe, they're doing a much better job protecting their kids and families than we are in the United States. And the United States should be at the absolute top of protecting families and children. And I applaud Vani for going out there, and she's been doing this for years, going out there looking to protect our kids and our families from the devastation that can happen from consuming all of these processed foods, food dyes, added sugars, and chemicals. And the thing that's the saddest is, these companies are trying to pull the wool over your eyes. They are using Baby Shark songs and Disney princesses and all of these things that kids love in order to draw them in, but actually then make them sick and damage their health. And this next video from the Senate hearing is from Courtney Swan, where she talks about glyphosate and these forever chemicals that are found in our food supply. Sometimes it's on the foods and we don't even know it's there.
Why is the U.S. government subsidizing the most pesticide-sprayed crops using taxpayer dollars? These are the exact foods that are driving the epidemic of chronic disease. Glyphosate is classified as a carcinogen by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer. They're finding glyphosate in human breast milk, placentas, our organs, and even sperm. It's also being found in our rain and our drinking water. Glyphosate still isn't labeled on our food. Parents in America are unknowingly feeding their children these toxic foods. Meanwhile, Bayer is doing everything it can to keep consumers in the dark while our government protects these corporate giants. They know that their product is harming people. Chronic illnesses are on the rise, and half of our population is obese. This is a national security issue. 77% of young Americans are ineligible for military service. We have industrialized our food at the expense of our health, prioritizing profits over people to the point where our bodies can no longer cope with this chemical assault. We must stop subsidizing the foods that make us sick. We must prioritize people over profit. This isn't just about policy, it's about survival. Let's create a future where our food system is designed to nourish us and not destroy us. Thank you.
As Courtney talks about there, glyphosate, this chemical found in Roundup pesticide, is banned in so many other countries. In fact, the CDC has labeled it a carcinogen. It causes cancer. And there are large Western cities like Los Angeles, Seattle, Miami, Baltimore, Austin that have restricted or banned glyphosate altogether. Yet federally, it's being subsidized. And can you believe that your taxpayer dollars are actually going towards supporting these companies that are harming our kids? Banning glyphosate is a no-brainer for the American people. And the fact that this has become a political issue at all makes no sense. You know, the reality is this: foods like wheat and corn that are the most heavily sprayed with glyphosate are also the most common foods consumed in the American diet. And it's poison that we're consuming, increasing obesity rates. And think about all of the new diseases that are continually popping up, all the autoimmune disease, all of the cancer, autism, all these conditions that are growing, all of them to some degree could have a link to the chemicals in our food supply. So the reality is this: most of the foods we're eating on a daily basis, if it's processed food and if it's not organic, it's been sprayed with glyphosate. We're going to consume that. And the first thing it impacts is our gut microbiome. Studies have estimated that glyphosate may impact 54% of our gut bacterial species. So that's going to impact your nutrient absorption. It's going to impact your body creating vitamins and minerals, and also increase your risk of food sensitivities and allergies that continue to climb. So we know that glyphosate impacts our gut. It also impacts liver disease. In fact, chronic level exposure to glyphosate has been linked to a 20% increase in the incidence of fatty liver disease in animal studies. Cancer risk: individuals with high glyphosate exposure have been found to have a 41% higher risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we know for a fact that these chemicals and pesticides like Roundup are causing diseases in our body like food allergies, cancer, and other major chronic health conditions. And last thing I want to point out is it's everywhere. As she talked about, we're finding it in rainwater, we're finding it in breast milk, we're finding it in semen in men, we're finding it everywhere. And so this is something that should be banned a long time ago. But across the board, as I look at people like Alex Clark and Vani Hari and Courtney Swan. It is so important that as Americans, we stand up for what's right. We stand up for our health. We stand up for the kids, the most vulnerable out there in society. And we can do this by paying with our dollars, right? By buying foods that are certified organic and that are clean and healthy. We can do this by sharing this sort of content on social media and getting the message out there. We can get it with voting with our votes, voting with our dollars, but just go and speaking out, educating other people about the truth. Here's the thing. We all love our kids. We want to take care of our kids. We want to take care of our kids' kids and future generations. If we want our kids to be healthy, we've got to take a stand. We've got to start doing the right thing now. And that is by doing everything we can to combat these big agricultural companies and food companies that are taking care of our kids. And we need to expose the truth by voting with our votes, voting with our dollars, and by educating others. I want to say, hey, thanks so much for all of you who are already doing this, who are spreading the message, who are taking care of your kids and taking care of the health of this nation. I hope you've enjoyed this reaction video where I wanted to be able to share these amazing women like Casey Means and Vani Hari and Courtney Swan and Alex Clark were able to really get there in DC on the front lines and be able to fight for the right of our kids and our right to be healthy.